Hello to the chicos and the chicas. Welcome back to beating grandmasters with principal chess. The other day I had a game against the GM and it really did go my way. Not so much in the result, but the way how the game developed. So I thought that that was going to make an ultimate YouTube material. Funnily enough, I never think about that when I lose a game horrendously. Wink, wink. So let's get right into it. I am behind the white pieces and my opponent is Grandmaster Kazmodan. I think that's Diablo, isn't it? Right, the opening is the don't do this ever if you are playing with the black pieces, opening d4, b6. So much so, in fact, that I have the habit, bad one, of often pre-moving knight f3 after d4 in blitz, and that's exactly what I did here. Of course, normally I would have gone e4, but knight f3, bishop b7 sort of forced me now into back to d4 opening territory. So I played c4, e6, and I played here quite standard a3. Now, you know, guys, you know that I despise the bunny ears, absolutely hate them, and I always preach against them. And now, here we go, the guy just did it. What's the story? The story is very simple. This setup, which is kind of a pseudo-Dutch, is aiming to accomplish a setup, a piece setup where they play f5, I play blah, they play bishop b4, they trade down here, and then they create a fairly decent bind on the e4 square, and all of a sudden all of the black pieces make perfect sense, and there's nothing really that would indicate that white has the slightest hope of an advantage here. And so a3 is fundamentally important in order to simply deny a good square for this bishop, and you will see right away that this diagonal, despite appearances, is very short for that bishop to find a good square, and it's likely going to end up on e7 where it's very passive. Of course, this idea is entirely the same as the famous Petrosian variation, which I do promote in my d4 course. By the way, speaking of the devil, or rather the angel, my d4, d5 black repertoire has launched, so if you haven't checked it out on Chessable yet, please do so. Link below. So yeah, here is the same story. We want to deny the bishop coming to b4 and adding another piece that fights for the e4 square, and after bishop b7, knight c3, this is the Petrosian variation of the Queen's India, which was championed among others by Kasparov. So in this game I was hoping to go for that structure, or in case of f5 I would go immediately for this, my beloved maneuver with d5. Now this is something that I really like to do against these early Dutch setups where black plays b6, bishop b7 too soon. This d5 push is very annoying to face, and the reason for that is because naturally black would like to push past, but that's not possible because e5 is hanging, and even if they did, having committed the bishop to b7, pushing past seems not really optimal. Undermining d5 is borderline impossible, and so this tension often leads to awkward situations for black, especially because I can later on play knight d4 and improve or increase the pressure. Now, admittedly, or not quite spokenly, but behind the scenes sort of, my idea and my goal behind this whole series when I'm showing you these games is to model that almost all of my moves are based on very basic, easily understandable concepts, principles that anyone could repeat in their own games. And I know that this is a little bit far-fetched. If you are a 1700 rated player, you go like, I could never play like this. But that's exactly what I'm aiming to do here, is to close the gap, to breach the distance a little bit, because like I'm going to attempt again, you will see that I have done nothing in this game that would count like, oh, amazing or innovative or wow, that's top quality chess, other than just playing very apparently logical, good-looking moves. What do they look like? Well, let's have a look. Opponent played bishop b7, I played knight c3. Anyone would have played that. Bishop f6. I was a little bit confuzzled about this, expected knight f6 here, when I would have played g3, bishop g2, castles, and then knight d4. That would have been roughly my next 5 moves. But bishop f6 made me think that perhaps my opponent here is quite keen to take on c3, doubling my pawns, making the structure rigid, then dump a knight on c5, and all of a sudden their position is quite respectable. So what is your most natural response to disallowing the doubling of the pawns? Not a lot of moves there. And in fact, according to the engine, I believe I didn't even choose well. The engine likes bishop d2, which I don't. But well, I suppose queen c2 is there too, but yeah, I don't know. I played knight d4 because I'm a big fan of chucking my stuff in the center, and I thought that the increased tension on e6 and f5 is something that looks very good, and I still think that this is a great move. Bishop takes d4 was played. That was another surprise, which I very gladly took, and my opponent played knight f6. So I thought, okay, here we go, time to develop, and here I played a move that perhaps wouldn't have been replayed against by many, but that being said, I think that the most apparent move for a club level player here would be bishop g5 to create a pin. I didn't like this idea too much. The engine loves it, by the way, because after castles I thought that I would be hit with a h6 move very soon, and I didn't want to trade, and coming back looks a little bit iffy. So, but yeah, maybe e4 here adds extra value here. I went very, very conservative, and I just played g3. Almost all Dutch setups are best met with white fianchettoing at least the f1 bishop, but often both of them. And that, again, in another way, increases the tension because now the bishops are going to eye with each other. So I played g3. They played d6, utilizing the pin that I couldn't take on e6, which normally would want to do when the d-pawn moves. I played bishop g2, and they played e5. Now, what I noticed in this position, first and foremost, was that, yes, technically, he managed to close it off. But this is not a completely locked position where we can safely say that knights are superior to bishops. This is still very volatile. It can blast open. I will have e4, I will have f4. And boy, God save black if we trade all those 4 pawns off and my bishops on the diagonal, in particular the dark one, comes to effect. So I dropped back. Where do you think I went? Where would you go? And again, probably there is no wrong answers. I thought that my queen would stand best on d2, because by this stage, it was very clear to me that the bishop did not belong on any square on this diagonal. And this perhaps is a topic that we need to break down. So I can see a myriad of club level players who would absolutely reject this, going like, that's the worst of all the queen moves because it blocks the bishop in. To which I would counter that, okay, let's play then, for argument's sake, queen d1, which leaves the bishop's diagonal open. Where do you want to put the bishop? Oh, I don't know. Well, okay, then there was no point in arguing that it wasn't worth blocking it in. But, okay, seriously, where would you put it? Ah, g5. Right, and what do we do after h6? Oh, I'll have to take. Oh, but we didn't want to give up bishop 4 knight, did we? And all of a sudden, if we use all these reasonings, instead of just going like, oh, I don't want to block it in, but we look a little bit deeper, where is this bishop going to develop? We will conclude that it's going to develop to b2, and then I'm going to try to blast the diagonal open. And so nothing wrong with queen d2. That being said, queen d3, queen d1, queen d2 are all recommended by the engine, roughly of same value. But funnily enough, aesthetically, queen d2 pleased me the most, because in my head, I already visualized the pawn on b3, a bishop on b2, and I was very happy with what I saw. Opponent played castles, I castle 2. Opponent played a5, a very common move in this structure to try to deny b4 and secure the c5 square for the knight. Now, at this point, normally, I would have played queen c2 to prevent a4 and then play potentially... I don't even know if I would have done that, actually. Let me rethink that. No, I wouldn't. So two choices are, one is b3, and the other one is probably rook b1 playing for b4, which is what I opted for. And then my opponent played a4. Now, this is a move that you never want to allow, provided that this pawn is safe and everything else is safe on the board. Because if this stays here and later a knight on c5 reinforces it, then it keeps our position rigid. We can't break with b4. The whole story is catastrophic compared to how nice it could have been. But we had a lovely move here, which is a very nice double attack. Queen c2, hitting here, and forcing the very awkward queen d7. And this was the point when I knew that my opponent was in for a very, very tough time, despite the apparently not so clear position. But I had some very easy and obvious ideas how I wanted to continue the game. And from here on out, I would like to ask you to play the Guess the Move game almost on every step of the way. So pause the video every time if you want to, just to see if you could play this out the way I did. Because from here, the game took a very sharp turn from going slightly better for white to complete knockout winning in about 7 to 8 moves. So white to move. I played here the very logical bishop h3, and I'm calling it logical because the bishop didn't have a job there, and f5 is now very awkwardly under attack. And of course, I have additional plans behind it in case g6 comes, which I anticipated, and it was a bad move. I'm going to now continue with another very logical strike, e4. My play just literally plays itself. I don't need to be here. These moves just roll off the mouse and the finger, to use the analogy of rolling off the tongue. So, bishop c8 was played. Supremely ugly move. As soon as I saw this, I'm like, I'm gonna win this game. Because there is no way on earth that this kind of development with the queen in front of it, which by the way is totally different from what I did here by blocking my bishop, is just not going to fly. Again, super easy, super natural move. Very easy to find. You go like, what hasn't played yet? Ah, the bishop. Okay, well, let's find the most obvious move for the bishop. Ah, that's bishop h6 because that's a tempo. Right. Rook f7. And again, super easy move as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not sure if this would be, once again, easily found by many club level players, but I hope it would. Because the logic now is that we have got a huge lead in development. And the best way to translate that, by the way, similar to previous video with time, space advantage, is that you want to blast it open. You want now action to happen on your terms, because virtually any action is gonna be on your terms. So of course we went f4, doubling the tension in the center, provoking trades, opening files, diagonals, so that my superior army can absolutely demolish Black's forces, given that they are totally unprepared for battle. He took, I took. Yet another piece introduced into the game. Today I was showing this game, by the way, on stream, and I was asking people about how confident they would be to play this position against Magnus Carlsen, or, you know, some very high chess authority, and be confident that they would win at least one game out of 10. And there were a lot of people who said that there is no way that they would. But in my opinion, it's always an interesting measure of your chess knowledge and your chess confidence at the same time, is to look at various positions which are winning to a certain degree, some more so than others. And where is that threshold where you go like, okay, I could beat Carlsen from that. And I think it's actually a good reflection and self-reflection for you to check on your confidence level, your ability to evaluate positions. I think it's a fun game to occasionally play, just to place yourself on the food chain in this context. For the record, it's about 2.5, and yeah, it should be an easy win against anyone from here on out. Rook f4, queen e8, doubled up the rooks. The pressure mounting on f5 and f6, in particular due to the double f rooks, is now just too much to handle. They played knight d7, trying to catch up in development, but the rest of the game is just absolute carnage. Takes f5, queen e3 check, king h1, knight h5, and this was the last moment when, you know, some people would probably a little bit crumble because, ooh, the rook is hanging and the bishop is hanging on h6. The ultimate tool here that you need to use, and I'm not saying to ignore your opponent's moves, excuse me, but is that your opponent in this position has no right to attack to cause problems. You cannot possibly approach a position like this with a defensive mindset. So when knight h5 lands, what registers in your head first is not, oh my god, my rook is hanging. What registers first in your head is, I'm gonna go in for the kill now and demolish my opponent as a punishment for having 2 pieces out, another 2 kind of out, versus an entirely mobile army. There is no way that I have defensive thoughts, negative thoughts, second guessing. None of this bollocks is happening. The only thing you do here is think about how to absolutely destroy them. You cannot even think for a second about, ooh, f4 rook is hanging. And that's not to say that I'm, you know, disregarding what this move does. What I'm saying is that we have a clear understanding of who is doing what to whom in this position. It's not black attacking my rook. No, it's me absolutely pressing the wrong button. It's me absolutely demolishing them on the king side by taking on g6, which of course counterattacks the rook on f7. And after rook takes f4, note that knight f4 would lose a piece to takes and then take back. I can trade, and there is no adequate response here whatsoever because the rook has nowhere to go. h7 is hanging with check. There is mate on f8 if they don't look out. So yeah, there is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They had to take. I took back with actually I inserted the check because I wanted to be annoying. King h8, and then I took back on f4. Right now I'm about 59 pawns up, and I still enjoy a vastly superior development in lead. So knight f4, rook f4. He gave me a spy check. I kicked the queen out. The queen went back to e7, and at queen g6 my opponent decided that this was a perfect time to call it a day and resign, because there is a mate threat on g8 and there is a rook f7 threat, hitting queen, hitting mate. Too much to handle, no bueno. And that was it, a victory with white in 28 moves against the GM that really looked like a very thorough thrashing. Once again, I would like to go back to about here and model to you that from here on out, which is not looking still anything like a win for white, the position just offered so easy moves for me that I hardly needed to think. I needed to double check far more so than think, because the moves were just given, like bishop h3, no brainer, e4, bang, attack, bishop h6, bang, attack, f4, blast it open, bring the rooks in, open the fast, takes, bang, I take back, queen goes away, I double up. None of these moves, if you single them out individually, are even remotely close to what you would label as a difficult move to find. As a whole, I would say that the approach is impressive. That from here, I can already see how this is going to blast open into a superior position. That I can see how could appear to be a far more obscure concept and one that is difficult to reproduce. But as individual moves, I encourage you to believe me, you can do it. And once you master the individual moves, you will be able to recreate and create your own scenarios similar to this, because of the experience, because of the understanding of the greater picture. So look at this, f4, bang, 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 and after rook f1, the rest was just absolute ugly mopping up and taking care of business. So yeah, this is how principled chess wins the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I am going to be back with more content very soon. Thank you once again for watching. Please don't forget to sub, to like, to super thank me if you can, and I will be back with the next video soon.